Hello, good morning or good afternoon from wherever you're tuning in from today, and welcome. If you're joining us live, thank you for making the time. And if you're catching up on demand, welcome as well. It's great to have you with us for another Automotive Logistics live stream. Today, we're exploring the digital supply chain beyond AI and what lies behind the scenes for the automotive logistics and supply chain community to truly leverage AI as a tool. So just before we actually came onto the live stream, I had a call with our panelists backstage, and they said something which I think is very worth quoting up front is don't get caught in the AI bubble because bubbles always get popped. And I really don't share that to diminish AI's potential in any way, but more as an analogy to keep in mind as we approach today's conversations around AI. There's certainly excitement, noise, and big promises when it comes to AI tools, but what lies beyond the tool is an operational reality that is daily discipline of staying grounded in the data you trust, grounded in the business reality you operate in, and grounded in what it actually takes to implement AI safely and profitably into the logistics and supply chain. Before we dive in, just a big thank you to our sponsor, Loftware, for supporting today's live stream and helping us bring these conversations to life. Loftware works with organizations to make sure that the right data is flowing to the right place at the right time, from the factory floor all the way to the warehouse and beyond. And as we'll be exploring in our conversations today, getting those fundamentals right is ultimately what determines whether advanced technologies like AI can deliver measurable value without adding risk or any unnecessary complexity. So it is really especially fitting to have them backing today's conversation. And for anyone who hasn't yet met me, I'm Emily Umedimo, the managing editor of Automotive Logistics. My role means I have the pleasure of spending a lot of time with you, the community, through our research calls, our roundtables, and our events and live streams just like this, hearing what's real in logistics and supply chain. And right now, AI is at the center of so many of our conversations. So what's really striking to me right now is definitely that tension. On the one side, the pace of AI capability as a tool is moving incredibly fast, and on the other side, the pace of AI literacy, which is the real understanding of AI use inside an organization, is moving a little bit more slowly. So today is more about bridging that gap, bringing the capabilities of the tool together with the discipline it takes to use AI as a collaborative and collective intelligence tool. And to help us do that, we're kicking off with a panel discussion featuring two industry voices: John Rich, Director of AI Transformation at Mazda North America Operations, and Paul Harris, Director of Solutions Consulting at Loftware. The discussion with John and Paul is interactive, so please do send us your questions at any point throughout the conversation today, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. And then after the panel, we'll close with a short wrap-up from myself. I'll share some of the wider conversations I've been having across the industry, spotlighting them through some of our recent coverage, including, how other OEMs and suppliers are approaching AI at scale, how they're putting governance around it, and what human plus machine really looks like in practice for them. But to John and Paul, welcome to the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really good to have you. I know you're in different time zones. Paul, you're with us here in the UK, and John, very bright and early for you in California. So I appreciate you being here with me. But to really kick off the conversation, John, I want to come to you first and foremost because, over the past year, you've joined us for many of our live streams and events. We've had conversations and explored the many different opinions around, where and how IA, that's kind of what you were telling me before, AI should be used in the supply chain. See, it's right here. But again, you've consistently brought it back to being, AI is a tool, and there's definitely a daily discipline behind it. So I really want to start there. What does staying grounded in AI look like in practice?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things is grounded AI is it's not skeptical. You have to be disciplined. And the difference really I find is lying in whether you can know the value before you deploy an AI solution, not after. If
Mm-hmm.
you know the value up front and you can understand and articulate your KPIs before you deploy anything, you're not experimenting on production infrastructure. You have to define what that better looks like, whether it's your cycle time, an error rate, a cost per unit, and hold the AI that you're implementing to that standard from day one.
Perfect. Thank you. And Paul, your world at Loftware is really built around, product identification and supply chain traceability. So, from that vantage point, how do you balance customers' enthusiasm for, deploying technologies like AI with that practical reality that most, successful implementations are really dependent on like a data discipline, right?
Yeah. I mean, John took the words out of my mouth almost, which is know the value before you start. I think the AI is not going to fix bad data. And if you put AI on top of bad data, all you end up with is bad AI output. And the way that I tend to frame that to customers really is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Which really is what John said. What are the KPIs you're measuring? How are you going to measure the success of this project? And are you considering what are all the inputs that you're going to need? Because clearly you're going to be using AI quite often, and we tend to see this. It's either to try and streamline, try and condense an existing process, or it's to help make better decisions. Mm-hmm. And you really have to go with that thing of saying, well, you want this to be successful. It's significant, but you've got to get the basics right first. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to end up 6, 12, 18 months down the line, and you won't have had the impact and you won't have had that value realization that you're looking for at the outset.
Yeah, perfect. Well, kind of on that, our discussion today is really bringing together a really diverse audience. We have, logistics leaders, but also supply chain directors and also digital transformation leads and even operation executives in our audience today. So, KPIs could maybe look different for different people within the supply chain. So if we're talking about, good AI literacy, kind of what does that look like for maybe different types of people in our audience if we're talking about, making sure the KPIs are set in stone up front? So, John, maybe I'll come to you first with that question.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with literacy is not a uniform language. It really depends on the level of audience. Something that is kind of ground into you in university when you're doing any sort of public speaking or presenting anything. And this is key in business, right? Each level or audience needs a different vocabulary. There's a different threshold of understanding. Executive literacy is all about risk and accountability. It's not about the technical depth. They need to understand what can go wrong, who is responsible when it does, and what does the data governance model look like. The dangerous executive is not the one who doesn't understand transformer models or all of the technical breadth of things behind the scenes. It's the one who can't ask the hard question about model confidence.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you. John, Paul, do you have anything you kind of want to share from your side about, with our audience today?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and John put nicely there, right? It is exec level, absolutely. That is around the risk. And I think as well, it's how does this meaningfully move the needle on the things that I'm trying to measure? If I'm an executive, how is this going to help me increase revenue? How is this going to meaningfully help me reduce costs? But even if you take that down through the different levels of the organization, it comes back to the first thing we were just starting with there, which is what's the problem you're trying to solve, and when you think about that AI literacy, if you understand fundamentally what that's doing, which is it's taking data and it's pattern matching, it's looking for similarities, it's kind of querying it and then rolling up a summary based on what's inside. And I think if you start to understand, okay, this is the output I can get, it's then coming back and looking at use cases and thinking about, well, yeah, how do I apply that? How do I offset any challenges, any risks it might introduce with the upsides of it? And all the time really making sure that you're staying grounded in that end state objective that you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Because I actually want to touch on that a little bit. John, you've made this point in our previous events as well that, generative AI isn't, and Paul, you mentioned it there, isn't actually reasoning, it's pattern matching at scale. So, that is definitely a meaningful distinction between, how you actually govern it. So how would you really define operational truth in a logistics context for our audience here? And how do you encode it so you can, the model can't talk out of reality?
Yeah, so it's really only as good as the patterns when you talk about pattern matching. So in logistics, operational truth is the authoritative, time-stamped state of a physical process. It has to be encoded. It cannot be inferred as you would have with an AI. And operational truth in logistics, it's really at the intersection of three core data streams: what was planned, what physically happened, and when. If your data model cannot maintain those three things with precision, timestamps, your AI has no reliable surface to pattern match against. So it always goes back to data. And if I wanted to go back a little bit and talk about this, I had a point that I'd written down here. You have to be so objective when you look at these things and ask yourself, does this model or this AI solution that I'm building, does it have objectively access to clean, complete, consistently structured operational data? If the answer requires a caveat, you're not ready to deploy AI, but you are ready to invest in your data.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, because following on from that, in what kind of decision areas would you also insist having a more of a strong human in the loop checks that are probably non-negotiable in all of that? And, could you say that, is there any danger in that, the rush to scale AI within the industry right now, we're stripping away some of those critical control areas?
Yeah, I think the rush to remove human in the loop it's driven by throughput pressure, not necessarily value analysis. So the right question isn't, can we remove this checkpoint? It's, what is the expected cost of errors if we do?
Mm-hmm.
Until that analysis has been done on your production data, not your demos, the checkpoint must stay. The human has to stay there. So you have to essentially approach that with just proper process design. Again, going back to the basics of plan, do, check, act, very simplistic things here. We're not really making this more complicated. You just have to always be objective with how you're doing. Understand that AI is fundamentally a machine. It is not sentient. We are not at AGI yet. This is a non-sentient machine that you are programming to make yourself faster. It's about throughput. It's not necessarily a value analysis. So you have to do that value analysis. And if you're wanting to remove one of those checkpoints to gain higher throughput, again, it's, what is my expected cost if I remove this and something does go wrong?
Yeah, perfect. Paul, I want to come back to one of the points that John just said there about having consistently structured data. What kind of, if we're looking at that consistently structured standardized data, what standards or organizational habits should teams, adopt to create that clean foundation in the first place?
So I think you're looking at, first of all, how are you delivering that data? So how you get, and John said, it's that what, where, and when are you measuring? So, but how are you initially making sure that the data is right there, that it can be read, and what discipline are you putting around making sure that you're getting it? So you're going, okay, these are the 10, 15 data points that I need to capture at each step in my supply chain in order to drive that decision making. And then you have to think about, well, how am I capturing that? How do I make sure that there is a consistency in data capture? Because what you have available, you then need to say, well, I need to make sure that I'm driving that. And this comes as well back to the human loop in the loop of, you need to make sure that you have that governance and that discipline around capturing the information as well, because otherwise you end up with misaligned data points, inconsistent information, And to bring that back around to the piece about, it's a garbage in, garbage out. If you put in bad data or inconsistent data, or you're not driving that standardization across the organization in how you're delivering it, you're going to end up, either getting poor results, or in a worst case scenario, actually ending up getting quite misleading information out of it.
Yeah, I want to stick with you, Paul, on that, because the supply chain, or especially logistics and supply chain in automotive, is data rich operation, and you still have to choose the data that is useful to capture. So how do you guide customers in distinguishing signal from the noise there, and like resisting that urge to data collect?
So I think it comes back to that thing of going, what is most important to solve right now? It might be that you're looking at going, the exercise will literally say, but here are like the 10, 15 areas that you're trying to address in the business. Let's focus on 3 of them. Let's look at 3 things. And what are those 3 biggest things that are going to meaningfully have an impact? Now, you might want to have a fully AI-enabled demand planning, demand execution, supply chain management solution, and that's fantastic. But if you're not even sure which suppliers are able to even access systems, which ones do you even still have that are part of your network? Do you even know where is stuff actually ending up, or when are things arriving at your warehouses? It's all well and good saying let's do this, but you actually have to pair it back to those kind of the fundamentals of what things, if you solve these things now, the fewest things that you can address that will have the largest impact. And it's really interesting because very often when you put it in those terms, customers say that they don't go, oh, right, we have bigger issues than we thought, but they actually look at it and go, well, there's some basics here. There's some easy wins that we can get by solving those like 2 or 3 core areas. And then you have that firm foundation, and then you can build upon it to get to that North Star.
Yeah, perfect. John, I mean, you're nodding your head all the way through, probably bringing it back to what you said about that consistently structured kind of data foundation. But did you have anything else to add? Like, how do you really resist that urge, like being in the supply chain, to over collect on the data?
I think there's got to be a happy medium, sort of a balance, again, between what are your short-term goals, what are your long-term goals. And I think when we get in the world of data quality issues, people tend to want to hide those. They don't want to address them. But that's where the value is. If you really focus on those things and truly do an effective root cause analysis of why can I not invest in AI, it's always going to come back to that data layer. And then focus on those maybe 2 or 3 things, like Paul said, of what can I do to gain the most value the quickest. And most times that is always in your data, its structure, and its quality.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's, when we're talking about speed there as well, and like speed with standardization can be quite a difficult kind of thing to achieve, especially when you've got, legacy systems, multiple stakeholders, probably different definitions of the truth across, plants, regions, and supply chain partners. How do you truly balance that with everyone that you're dealing with there, John?
I think data management is a critical skill that is quickly evaporating in our industry, where people think that AI is just going to solve all of their problems. And as you put it, when there are multiple definitions of truth, the answer is not to pick one unilaterally. It's to make the disambiguation explicit. Which system is the source of record for which attribute and under which conditions? You have to document that and encode it. Any ambiguity that lives in people's heads of them trying to question where the truth is, what does it mean when it's here, what does it mean when it's there, and leaving that all here and not documenting it with whether it be in a physical Word document, a spreadsheet, or as industry is moving, especially with AI, in using documentation as code. So coding your documentation in Git repositories, things like that. If you leave all that information in people's head, it's a ticking clock.
Yeah.
And you will run out of time.
Yeah, the analogies are coming through there, John. Paul, did you have anything to add to kind of what John's saying there?
Well, no, I think I go. The only thing really is it's back to that reinforcing that single system of record, single system of truth, and to drive any kind of meaningful transformation, you need to establish that piece. And I think as well what John neatly highlighted is that the only thing I would add that I wrote down is when you start to get under the hood and look at how your supply chain is actually working, you start to realize just how many weak links there are and how fragile it is. And again, particularly in automotive, with a just-in-time model, we've seen, even very recently, just how a really, really small change or one part of that falls out of line or falls over, the entire thing, there was a cumulative impact all the way down the chain, which ultimately, again, is going to cost money. That's what it comes back to, money. If you get that wrong, it's going to cost money, and it comes back to the thing of going, well, why do we have that? Well, we didn't have a single source of truth. We were relying on a decision-making process that was based on instinct, not data. Or we implemented AI to just drive an entire part of a fundamental process, and we just let it be, and we assumed it was correct, and didn't drive any governance around it. And you only find that out when it's too late.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, I think it's important. Definitely, this conversation is all about laying the groundwork, and data is the foundation to that. But there are certainly advantages of using AI as a tool. Supporting smarter decisions, flexibility in operations, especially in situations where we've got now where the supply chain is really experiencing ongoing crises in some ways. But before we get to kind of some of the bigger horizon topics and some of the near wins or longer term transformations, I should say, of what AI could bring, what are some more pragmatic short term AI or automation use cases in logistics that can deliver more of the fast wins and build internal capability to go further? John, I'll come to you on that.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to what are the basics that have been in our industry for a very long time, and they're not going away. And it's documentation, right? Whether it be internal knowledge management or freight invoices, customs docs, BOLs. These are things that are highly structured, and they are constantly being reviewed and updated. So most likely a lot of that groundwork has already been done in this area because it's tied to money. So I think, when you look at deploying maybe a RAG-based system or retrieval augmented generation-based systems on those types of things, there's very low risk, there's high visibility, and it builds AI literacy organically across your team. The data is already there, so the value is immediate. Now, if the answer to that is yes, we do have these documents, there's no issues, we get the same types of BOLs every day, all of this, then the value's there. But if it requires 6 months of data cleanup first, it's a transformation project. It's valuable, but it's not going to build credibility. So just know those things up front and think about those things. Understand, where do I need to invest in data versus where is a really quick win that I can give to this technology and deploy it and get tangible value today.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, Paul, you were nodding as well to most of what John was saying there. Was anything kind of resonating with what you're seeing with your customers, and how there can definitely be more short-term use cases, but obviously bringing it back to the data.
Yeah, I think there absolutely is, and I think it's about from a data standpoint, if you know that you're going to know which markets you serve, you're going to know what regulations you have to comply with in those markets, and well, you can then a quick win from an AI standpoint is say, well, can you build something fairly simple that's going to look at those regulations, look at those markets, and help you understand and track and foresee any changes that are coming? Or is there anything that you're doing that's coming down the line that you're maybe not aware of? So it's putting in that core kind of information that isn't changeable, isn't shifting, but that you need to be aware of, and you can start planning around. And then it starts to come, you kind of then start growing that out and going, well, we know that we are trying to capture this piece of information. We're trying to understand, how long it takes from goods in to put away. Right? Just tracking those things, when is that complete? Starting to capture those fairly simple data points again that you can take out and you can understand and go, well, are there any patterns across there? Mm-hmm. Is this happening when we're bringing in certain types of goods? Is this happening in certain locations? Are there certain places that we're getting this from where we're starting to see that? And then you can, to the root cause analysis point John made earlier, start to just kind of dive into that and do that analysis. But what it helps you do is that first 20, 30% of the decision making, the research that you're doing, you can accelerate that by applying an AI model over the top.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I know we only have a couple more minutes together, but I really do want to get your thoughts on this, as we're definitely seeing this more as a trend, as more digital tools becoming embedded into the supply chains. We're seeing some roles within organizations shift. We're seeing, planners become analysts, IT experts becoming embedded into operational teams. Do you see this helping to close the AI literacy gap? And, if so, what else also needs to happen in terms of skills, data mindset, and leadership to really ensure that the ongoing capability of AI is kind of not, it is an ongoing capability, I should say, rather than that one-off transformation? John, I'll get your thoughts first, and then we'll come to Paul.
Yeah, I think the leadership is really a key aspect here. That sort of dimension is often underweighted. AI transformation stalls when senior leaders can't articulate the value prop and they can't ask those hard governance questions, right? You really should start with investing in executive level AI literacy explicitly. You don't need to start with deep technical training. I've said this before at previous events, at some of the conferences that we've done together, where I talk about, you don't need to go out and hire AI engineers to come in. Again, think about everything that Paul and I have been talking about. It's about data. There's been so many different use cases that we've been able to operationalize by using the data scientists and data engineers we have on staff. Because people ask me, how long have you been doing AI? I've been doing it for 10 plus years, because it's data behind the scenes. Machine learning, deep learning, all of these things are not new to us. So invest in the audience that is going to be helping direct and drive your organization, because once they understand the value, they understand how to ask the hard questions and keep that risk register in mind, and they can make those decisions. You're going to be able to have a performance dimension that you add into this that can scale from top down and bottom up simultaneously.
Yeah, perfect. Paul, I want to ask you the same question, but also to round us off, also share, like, if, the audience takes away really one practical action in the next 30 days to avoid any type of AI bubble scenario to move forward, kind of what would your advice be on that?
Sure. So I think, again, John articulated it brilliantly. It's that the AI transformation, it stalls when you can't articulate the value prop. If you don't know what the problem is you're trying to solve, what is going to be the business impact of doing that, and what value will it deliver, you're never going to really close that gap around AI literacy, and it will remain a hype, a kind of this, a fad almost, right? Something that people play with on the weekend on their phone, and you generate funny images. It becomes really hard to apply that. unless you can meaningfully detach it being an AI application and start with that business problem, work through where you want to get that to, and then think, okay, is there a dimension that we can solve for, or that we can meaningfully address bringing in AI? I think, and then to round it off, the final thing, the bubble, and I'll share a quote from 30 years ago, where the dot-com bubble. A bad business online is still a bad business, right? AI on bad data is still bad data. So you just need to take that, when you think about that action, I would always, in the next 30 days, go away and think, if you're trying to think about implementing AI today, ask yourself, what problem are you going to solve by doing that? What is the risk if I don't have the right information that I'm inputting? And what kind of steps do I need to take to make sure that I'm going down the right path? And if you do that, you'll come to a much, much better outcome, because then you're making an informed decision. You're not jumping inside the bubble. You're not doing anything, because everyone else is doing it. And you'll ride that out, and you'll end up in a far better place than you started.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think to Paul's point, the bubble isn't AI itself, right? It's the gap between what organizations expect and what they've prepared for. The antidote to that is an honest internal assessment. Again, a bad company online, a bad AI solution is still a bad solution. 30 days spent on understanding your data and gaining clarity is worth more than 30 days of trying to find the right vendor to solve your problem. If I'm going to go to Paul and Loftware or any solution vendor, if I understand my data up front, not only are we going to have a better engagement together, but we're going to reach that value proposition much, much faster.
Perfect. Thank you. It's a great sentiment to end on for sure. Thank you, John and Paul, for such a great open discussion. We did have some questions come in for the audience, but I know we were tight on time today. But I will make sure those are shared with you. But thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to continuing having these conversations with you and the whole community going forward. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then just back to the audience now, for anyone whose questions weren't, answered, just a quick note, Loftware will be joining us in Bonn for our conference in a couple of weeks' time. And John will also be joining us in Nashville for our digital focused event. So please do join us there to keep the conversations going. It is a great opportunity to bring us together as a community in person. But bringing the conversation back really to that basis of what John and Paul just shared there, and stitching that into some of our wider coverage of what we're seeing from other OEMs and suppliers, a clear pattern is really starting to emerge when it comes to grounding AI in practice. And those really come down to, 3 consistent pillars: data foundations, human oversight, and, practical scaling, as we heard from our panelists just there. On the data foundation front, SEAT's logistics lead spelled it out to us quite well. The company built a Snowflake-based control tower and made sure all relevant logistics data is unified, clean, and structured into a single source of truth. Only then did they deploy agents to handle routine tasks. And the SEAT lead stresses we, must upskill people, ensuring everyone has the right capabilities before letting AI run. And BMW tells a similar story through its iconic agent platform. BMW built company-specific agents loaded with the company's own processes, supplier information, and rules. These agents answer employees' questions, all from, volumes and quality specifications all the way through to market updates directly inside its procurement system. And the story really shines through in Oliver Ganzer's Red Sofa with Us. Oliver is the lead across the digitalization, in digitalization across BMW supplier network and procurement. And in the interview, which you can access by the link shared in the chat, he describes that if an agent can't fully approve a special case process, like a tool reallocation, it flags the issue for human approval before continuing. He also further emphasizes that while these agents know the company's DNA, a human always authorizes high impact decisions. And both SEAT and BMW in the coverage we've just shared with you also emphasize a pragmatic scaling approach. BMW, for example, explained that they begin with sandbox testing for generative AI, scaling only the pilots that prove their value. And we're seeing the same approach being used with Audi. The company first published a governance framework built around respect, security, and transparency before implementing AI across its global sites. And it's now using AI to help cut lead times and streamline logistics operations. But even in packaging, which might seem slightly outside the core topics that we're focusing on today, the pattern really still holds. We're seeing companies adopt connected packaging and real-time coding as part of a more digitalized workflow. And within that environment, AI is supporting predictive maintenance and automated quality checks. But with all of these systems, it really does rely on that standardized data from the line and alerts that go to operators when issues arise. And in stressing these pillars, to round off, I really want to just bring you back to SEAT's example with Rafael Sanchez, manager of customer-driven supply chains, as he really enforces what you just heard John and Paul discuss here today, touching on also those core pillars of data strategy, human-in-the-loop decision-making, and practical AI scaling. So I'd like to share that video with you now.
Digitalization roadmaps with SEAT. SEAT joining us for the third time at this event, and this time with Rafael Sanchez, who recently took over the responsibility for customer-driven supply chain at SEAT, and that includes a lot of digitalization initiatives along with other responsibilities. We're going to come on to that. I wanted to jump right into a use case that you shared with our audience here on using autonomous agents in inbound logistics planning. This really builds on your control tower and other foundational work that you've done over the past couple of years at SEAT. Tell us about some of the key functions, tasks, and benefits that this tool is providing.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me in the red sofa.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Well, our Task Manager is a system that supports our inbound colleagues in logistics. It is a multi-agent system based on our Snowflake-based control tower that also take information from unstructured ways like emails, and that can classify, prioritize, and resolve some repetitive tasks. Okay, the main benefits are that they can improve the personal productivity of our teams. Okay, can avoid repetitive tasks and can save a lot of time for our teams, and also in the future can take autonomous decisions based on alert and critical issues, and try to avoid any disturbance of our supply chain.
So this is really can help to support, as you say, making a better decision faster, automating some of that information delivery. What would you say some of the very important foundational work that enables or will enable an agentic flow like this? You mentioned the data lakes, for example. What are some of the most key points?
Yeah, data is important. We must have a clear data strategy, okay, based in a modern platform, okay, like Snowflake, with a data lake, and having all the information, all the relevant data of logistics, and we must have this data clean, structured, and able to be used in the different use cases. Okay, that's fundamental. We need a single source of truth for data. We also must skill up people. Okay, is fundamental. It's just to have all the people on board and try to give the right capabilities. Okay, when it comes to artificial intelligence, that's for me the two fundamental topics to be done before just going through this agentic intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned that this is a human in the loop process. Obviously, this is already supporting workers to take this. But tell us a little bit about the human in the loop approach and why that's so important for this.
Okay. Yeah. We keep humans taking the control of the whole situation. Okay, our agents can take information, can take autonomous decision when it comes to easy processes that don't have a high impact. Okay, in our business they can autonomously decide, but when it comes to use cases with more relevant, more critical, we have the final decision to humans. Okay, it's like kind of a validation step. Okay, basically it's a cooperative model that agents propose and human or people finally decide. Okay, that's our approach.
Perfect. You've just seen a short clip there from Rafael Sanchez from his recent Red Sofa interview with us, leaving with us a very important takeaway. To truly ground AI in your supply chain, you have to ground it first in your data and processes, and then let AI accelerate the work while humans guide it. The result is smarter logistics and supply chains without introducing uncontrolled risks. And before we wrap, I want to encourage you to watch the full interview and explore all the stories we've shared today, whether you're at your desk or on the go. All the resources mentioned here, along with today's live stream, will be available on our website to revisit at any time. I also want to share that we also have a full event calendar for the year ahead. We're kicking things off in just over a week in Bonn, where myself and several colleagues will be attending. So please do come over and find us to tell us your stories if you are there. And as you heard earlier, Loftware will be there as well. And we'll continue these conversations around digitalization. It's definitely a topic that sits right at the heart of improving the end-to-end automotive supply chain. And of course, we'll also be bringing you more live streams later this year, including our next live stream in the summer, where we'll focus on the latest market developments coming out of the ASEAN market. These are all conversations you'll want to be a part of, so mark your calendars now. We'll send them, we'll give all of this available on demand as well. So now that just leaves me to say a final thank you to Loftware for supporting today's live stream, and of course to John and Paul for sharing their insights as well. And to all of you watching live or on demand, thank you for joining us too. Goodbye for now.